Good morning, everybody, and welcome to today's webinar. We are going to be talking about working with sellers. You have me, Jane Stevens. I'd love to hear from you guys as we go through the webinar today. Please feel free to chat with me. Let me know if you currently have any listings and where that lead came from. Of course, here at Zolo, we're very fortunate that we get leads basically delivered every day, and oftentimes they do come to us as buyers, but in having conversations with those buyers, oftentimes they do have properties that they also need to sell. So obviously there are a lot of sellers that come to us as well, but again, I'd love to hear from you and just hear what different lead sources you've been successful with in finding and working with sellers, because that's what we're going to talk about today. So let's jump right in. Today we are going to be talking about how to prepare a CMA. We're going to talk about the listing presentation, what you need to bring with you. Of course, we're going to talk about marketing the property, and then of course, how to handle offers. So a little bit of everything today. And again, if you have any questions, please feel free to chat with me. We'll get started with, of course, the initial conversation. So really, again, as I said, we do get leads delivered to us every day. Most of those come to us as buyers, but it's in the process of maybe that initial conversation or even, during that initial showing of properties, that's when you discover that they may have a property to sell. It's not every day that you get just a phone call saying, hey, can you come list my property? But it does happen. So if you are in that conversation, however it comes to be, definitely you want to be finding out information. So of course you want to know whereabouts they are, so what their address is. And keep in mind too, you can always do a search in Geo Warehouse so that if you have their name, you can also search for them and find out what property or properties they own, so that you can, of course, get some more information that way. But definitely asking them the question, whereabouts they live, and then of course, how many bedrooms or bathrooms they have. So all of this is, obviously standard information that you would want to know about the house. But of course, if they've lived in the property for a number of years, if it's been 10, 15, maybe even 20 years, it's possible that they have added to the property, maybe they've done an addition. So if you pull up that old MLS listing, and it says 3 bedrooms, it may be that, that's no longer the case. Maybe they've added something, as I said. So definitely asking those questions, even though they are fairly basic questions that you can look up. You just want to verify that that information that you're going to see online is still accurate, right? So definitely asking them if they've done any renovations, because again, if you're looking at an old MLS listing and the kitchen looks really dated, for example, you want to make sure that, if they have done renovations, that you're taking that into account. If you are going to be giving them a price, or you're going to be preparing a CMA and, you're going to be putting in there a price range, you want to know what renovations have been done. A really great question to ask is if they have a price point in mind. So, oftentimes you may get a response like, well, I'm not sure, that's why we're calling you. But in reality, I think a lot of sellers really do have a price point in mind. So maybe ask them, if they don't answer the question right away, maybe ask them if they know of, a neighbor selling their property recently, what they might have gotten for their property. And then usually that's how you can get a little bit of information from them. So for example, they may say, yes, our neighbor just sold for, $850, but our house is much nicer. So right there, that's your clue that they're wanting or expecting more than $850 for their property, right? So definitely asking them that question, because you don't want to go in there with comparables that are really low and nowhere near what they're expecting. You want to, hopefully be able to justify the number that they have in mind so that they do choose you, right? At the end of the day, they are going to choose an agent who they think is going to get them the most amount of money. So you want to be in line with their expectations. So asking them that question, I think, is really important. It's also good to know if they're meeting with other agents, just because, of course, you want to know what you're up against if you have competition. Again, if you discover that they are a seller, during the stage of showing them properties to buy, hopefully they've already sort of selected you before the listing presentation, right? They like you enough already to tell you that they do have a property to sell. They may even ask if you're able to help them with that, right? So they've kind of almost chosen you before the listing presentation. That's a great situation to be in, but of course it's not always the case. So just ask them if they are meeting with other agents so you know how to prepare yourself. And then also ask them if you can meet with them last, simply because you might want to say to them, I know that you've met other agents. Was there anything in their presentation that you didn't see in mine, right? So for example, if they say, well, we met with an agent who was going to do drone photography, we really like that, no problem. That is definitely something that you can then offer to do as well, right? So really asking them questions and really understanding what it is that they're looking for, what they're looking for in an agent, so that obviously you can come prepared and present yourself in that way. So those are just some questions to ask initially over the initial call or during that initial conversation, again, whether it's a phone call or during showing. So just really understanding, of course, what it is that they're looking to do. Now, another thing that I should mention here as well is if you do have somebody who is looking to buy something and they have a property to sell, the question does come up about, should I sell first? What should I do? How should I strategize this? So something that you may want to suggest to them right now is not submitting an offer on a property to purchase with the condition of them selling their home. That's going to be really difficult for them to get an accepted offer. So the alternative is you definitely want to make sure that they have a sellable property, and then maybe suggesting that they put in an offer to purchase with a longer closing date. So maybe 2 or 3 months, hopefully. So that gives you enough time to help them sell their property. So talking to them about that strategy as well, so that they feel comfortable in working with you. And then also maybe highlighting the importance of working with the same agent. So in other words, if you're helping them with the purchase, you're also helping them sell their property, and then that just streamlines the process, right? So just highlighting why it's beneficial to them to work with the same agent for both transactions. So let's jump into a little bit more about the CRM. So you definitely don't want to forget to go into your CRM and update your activities with this particular client, so that you're notifying the Zolo system that you actually have gone out on a meeting, which is a listing presentation. So just keep in mind, the meeting metric is measured. So if you call your growth manager and you want to know what your numbers are. They'll tell you, whether, your numbers are low in terms of meetings or showings, and that just may be simply because you're not entering them. So really make sure that, of course, I'm going to give you a reminder right now, make sure that you are updating your call activity. That's really the most important one, showings and deals as well. But don't forget about that meeting button as well. So if you are meeting somebody for the very first time, enter that as a meeting. And then if you are doing a listing presentation, also enter that as a meeting. So it's going to count towards your numbers, and the Zolo bot is watching in the background. The better your numbers, the better your leads are going to be, right? The busier you're going to be. So you want to be feeding the system so it continues to give you leads. So don't forget that that button exists, and definitely let it know that you are on your way to a listing presentation. So update that activity when that happens. And then of course you want to go ahead and prepare the competitive market analysis, so a CMA. So let's talk a little bit about that, because there are a couple of ways to do that in Treb. So of course, logging into your Treb system, you are going to be able to search for properties that are active, that have sold, or that have otherwise been terminated. So for example, if you're going into a condo, and those ones are great because there's a lot of comparables usually for condo properties. So if you know that they're, on the 4th floor, whatever it is, it's a 1-bedroom, whatever layout it is, you definitely want to go in and you want to look at other properties that are similar. So maybe the same floor plan, whatever the case is, you want to make sure that you're comparing apples to apples and not apples to oranges. And you want to see, first of all, what's available. So what's your competition going to be like? So you don't want to go in there suggesting a list price of 500,000 if everybody else is listed at 450. Yours is likely going to sit for a lot longer, right? And the other ones are going to sell. So you want to know what your competition is. And then of course, you're definitely going to want to know what the most recently sold properties are. So what condos have sold most recently in the building and what they went for. So maybe they were listed for 450, but they're selling for 425, whatever the case is, right? So you just want to obviously know all that information. So you want to be pulling that data from your Treb system. You also want to take a look at what was listed and what was terminated, because those were probably listed on the higher end and they didn't sell. And you might even notice that that same property came back on the market at a lower price and then it did eventually sell. So you really want to educate your seller on what's been happening in the building so that they know where they need to price themselves, right? You don't want them, suggesting a higher price and then having it sit, right? So talking to them also about how long they should expect to be on the market if it's priced right. So again, so really what you want to be pulling in terms of comparables is you want to be pulling hopefully 3 available properties, 3 sold properties, and then 3 terminated properties, right? So you can print those out. There's different ways that you can do your listing presentation, which we'll talk about, or you can do it electronically. So if you do have these listings that you've selected, I would suggest putting them into a listing cart. So I think I have a screen where I can show you how to do that. But anyway, saving all of your searches so that you can easily refer to them and then pull them into a CMA. So as you can see over here, I'm jumping ahead a little bit, but there is the Stratus Plus Top CMA that you can use, as well as the CMA button here. So those are the 2 different ways that you can create a CMA within Treb, and I'll show you how to do those specifically. So here's a little bit more about the search criteria. So as I said, you really want to be pulling comparables that are similar to each other, right? So again, apples to apples, not apples to oranges. So if you are going into a listing presentation and it's a condo again, and there are maybe 3 or 4 buildings, then make sure that you have the street address in that range, right? So maybe the buildings are, 5220, 5240, 5260, whatever it is. So you want to be putting in there that the street number is between 5200 and 5300. So that's going to include all of the buildings, right? Say for example, it's on Dundas Street. So that's what we're going to be looking at, right? Obviously, we're not going to be putting in the price or the status because that's what we're trying to figure out. So really what you want to select is maybe last status being sold or terminated, whichever search you're doing, and then really making sure that you're comparing 1-bedrooms to 1-bedrooms, or if there's a den, you want to include that as well. So really making sure that your search criteria reflects the subject property that you're going to go in and do a listing presentation for. And as I said, when it's a condo, there's usually a lot of results. So, which is good because you have a lot to compare it to. So the best thing to do is just obviously to sort it by sold date, ideally, because then that way you're going to see the most recently sold properties up at the top. And then you can go through them manually and just make sure that, yes, in fact, they are the same layout. So yes, it's a 1-bedroom plus den. So just making sure that you're selecting the right ones that compare to the property you want to list, right? And then taking a look at what's been going on in that building. So if you take a quick look at the screen here, it looks like it seems to be a bit of a trend to list for $399.9. And then you can see there that some have sold for slightly less than that. Some have sold, I'm just looking quickly. Yeah, in this case, when I did this search a few months ago, these were all selling for just under, but I'm sure if we did this search now, if anything was listed for $399, I'm sure it probably went for $410 or $420, whatever the case is. So really knowing and understanding what's happening in the building so that you can talk to your clients about that. And of course, oftentimes sellers are watching what their neighbors are doing, so they'll have a good understanding of what's going on, but really making sure that you're pricing it right so that you do get the right offers for the property. So again, just sorting that by date so that you can see the most recent up at the top, and again, you can advise accordingly, right? That's listed for $399, or maybe not. Maybe if the last several properties have sold for $410, let's list it for $410, right? So having that conversation with your buyers. And then of course, as I said, selecting the ones that you do want to include in your CMA. So going back to this screen up here, you do have those check boxes along the side, so you can select as many as you'd like. And then from there, you can go ahead and put them into a listing cart. So there's this cart up here at the top. So if you were to select several properties and then you click on cart, you will be able to create a cart for your particular client. So you would create that cart, and then you would go ahead and then you would add these listings to your listing cart. And the reason for that is just so that you don't have to do this search all over again. You don't have to reselect the properties all over again. You have them saved in a listing cart that you can pull into your CMA directly here in Treb. So you want to be selecting the appropriate comparables. All right. So once you've done that, yes, this is how you would create a new cart, simply with your seller's name. And then, as I said, you'll be able to refer back to them easily. So if you did want to pull them into a CMA, then the first one that I'm going to show you is CMA, and then I'll talk about top CMA. The reason I'm going to do it separately is because obviously they're two different things, but the CMA within Treb is free. It's available to you. Top CMA is a little bit more sophisticated. It looks nicer. It's more interactive. It's something that you can email to your client. They can click through the comparable properties. They can click through the photos. So it's a little bit of a nicer presentation. So I'll cover that shortly. But if you just wanted to use the free version, that's of course available to you as well. So if you were to click on CMA on the sidebar, that's going to take you, let's see, hopefully, to your CMA. So of course, from here, then you would want to create a new CMA, again, using the name of your client, maybe the address, and then you can go ahead and name that however you want to name it. So of course here you're going to have lots of options to enter in their contact information, what the subject property is. So basically you go ahead and fill this all out, and what's going to happen is it's going to create a PDF for you. So this is definitely something that you can do quite easily, and you can download it, you can print it off, you can bring it to the property. You might even have it, downloaded as a PDF that you also email to them. So, these are just the steps to create the CMA. But as I said, I will show you the other one as well, because it is a little bit more sophisticated. Because what this one looks like is a little bit more, I'll say, classic looking. And so this is the CMA. Really, if you were up against several other realtors, imagine that everybody just showed up with this CMA directly from Treb. There's not a lot of magic to it. It's not very sophisticated. So again, I will show you the interactive CMA, because I do think it will set you apart, especially if you add that to, a listing presentation, which we'll talk about shortly as well. So here's the top CMA. So again, this one does cost a little bit of money. I think it's $30 a month. I think everything in real estate is $30 a month. But if you click on top CMA there, that will give you the option of, again, doing this in an interactive way. So I do have a screenshot of this. So basically, if you click on that top CMA, you're going to be able to enter the address. And again, it's going to populate a map so they can move this around. It will auto-populate this information if this property has been previously listed, but of course you can go ahead and tweak anything in there, right? So once you're done with the basic information, then it's going to pull your comparables from your listing cart that you previously created. And so this is basically what it's going to look like, and you can customize it with your own colors and that sort of thing. But basically it's going to pull in the address. You do have an option here of writing a paragraph. You might want to suggest a price range in there, but if you haven't physically gone to the property yet, if you're preparing this in advance, you may want to leave that out just because you haven't seen the condition of the property. So you may want to reserve your price range once you've actually been to the property and you can make a better assessment. So again, as I said here, you can share this report by email. I would recommend sharing it after you've done the presentation, just because you don't want to send this to them prematurely and then they cancel the appointment. So you want to hold this back and share it with them after you've done the presentation, or even during, while you're there, you can definitely share it with them. Otherwise, again, you can download this as a PDF. And again, it's going to look a little bit nicer than the classic CMA that you can use in Trev. So downloading your PDF, you can bring basically a printed version with you, also show it to them online. It's always good to have it in different formats, and I'll talk about that in a minute with your listing presentation, just because you want to be following their lead, right? You may have sellers who are very formal, who want you to do the whole presentation, in which case you're going to want your laptop and you're going to want the PowerPoint presentation. But you may have sellers who are a little bit more casual, right? In which case you may want to do the printed format so you can talk about it, flip the pages, and have a little bit more of a discussion as opposed to a formal presentation. So a couple of ways to present this CMA as well as the classic one. So I encourage you guys to play around with this so that you can see exactly how it works. Again, it's really interactive. When you do pull in the comparables, one of the nice things is that they will be able to view the photos. So again, in contrast to the classic CMA that I showed, those ones they're not as interactive. You won't be able to click on the properties, especially obviously if you download it as a PDF. They won't be able to look at the photos for the previous listings that sold. So it's hard for them to compare the condition of that property to their property. So again, I encourage you guys to play with this. If you haven't signed up for it before, I think there is a free trial. I think like so many things in real estate, there's a free trial. So do take advantage of it so that you can use this as part of your listing presentation. So before we get to the listing presentation, of course, we've had the initial call, but before the meeting, there are things that you can do to stay in touch with the client. So for example, if you've spoken to them or you took them out on showings and they are interested in you coming over, but the showing isn't booked until next week or maybe 4 days from now, you can still stay in touch with them after the call and before the meeting. You may want to have some sort of pre-listing package or an email that you send out that basically just talks about what it is that you're going to do. So this isn't your formal listing presentation. This isn't showing them the comparables yet, but it is maybe telling them a little bit more about you, examples maybe of homes that you've sold. If you're brand new to real estate, you don't need to include that, but you may have testimonials from past clients. So you can start just building that profile, right, that they're going to trust in. So, having that biography, having examples of properties you've sold, testimonials, just builds that trust. You may also want to talk to them about your marketing plan, right? So what is it that you're going to do differently than any other agent? And, it may be a good idea here to even include stats about Zolo.ca, right? So they're not just choosing you, but they're choosing our brokerage as well. And you can definitely talk about how we have, Canada's #1 real estate app. 90% of buyers start looking online, so they're going to be attracted to the Zolo site. Any Zolo listing is going to be featured on the Zolo website. So talking about things like that already start to get them excited about, okay, we do want to list with Zolo. We do like this agent. So really you're starting to build all of these reasons why they should choose you before you've even gotten there. You may also want to disclose who your team is, and even if you don't really have like the traditional real estate team, but you do have partners that you're aligned with, you can disclose that. So maybe you have a painter that you work with, maybe you have a home inspector, maybe you have all of these things. Maybe you have cleaners that can come in and help, or junk removal companies. So you can have a bit of a vendor list that you share with them so that again, they know that it's not just you, they have a whole team that's going to help sell their property. And then you might even want to include a checklist for what they need to do in order to prepare their home. So oftentimes it will be decluttering, maybe staging the property. So having a checklist for that they can, take a look at. So again, they're prepared. And then of course, an explanation of the home selling process. I've shared before a sort of roadmap. Usually it's for buyers, but there is one for sellers as well. So sharing something like that with them, it doesn't have to be, a 12-page PDF. It literally could be a one-page sort of roadmap or guideline, just explaining each step. So again, that they're familiar with the process. You can definitely let them know local market data, city community information, that sort of thing. Examples of that might be, there's a website called Hood Q that you can download, and that gives information about the property, about that particular neighborhood. Another thing you might want to do is, again, going back to Geo Warehouse and taking a look at the demographics. That's going to help you also, right? So if you're selling a condo, for example, you may not be targeting, families. You may be targeting, single professionals, right? Alternatively, if you do have a house that you're selling, then your focus may be on trying to find families, right? And you can do that, if you're doing Facebook target ads, you can definitely sort of target them that way. So really understanding who's going to be moving into that property so you can target them, and talking about that in your pre-listing email or presentation, whatever it's going to be. And literally this could be an email with just steps, with headers and, little paragraphs of what it is that you're going to do. It doesn't have to be another presentation that you put together. It's literally just something for them to start feeling like, they can trust you with this job. And then a really nice thing to put at the end of it, I think, is to give them a little bit of homework. If they reply to this, or if they prepare this, then you know that they're doing the work, they're serious, right? So, maybe ask them to have a few things ready before their meeting, right? So maybe you send them a seller disclosure form that you ask them to fill out, right? Maybe you ask them to get a copy of their key so that you can put a lockbox on the property. They've already got an extra set, right? If they have copies of mortgage statements, or maybe renovations that they did, just to show that, yes, they did a $100,000 renovation to the kitchen. So asking them to compile all of that paperwork. When you show up at the listing presentation, if they have all that ready, then you know for sure that they're serious, right? So definitely having something that you can put together so that you are in touch with them after that initial call, or conversation, I should say, and before the actual listing presentation. So lots of ideas there. So let's talk specifically about the listing presentation. So what do you want to bring with you? So you've prepared that CMA in Treb, whether you did the classic version or the top CMA, whatever it is that you've done. Maybe you've simply just printed out 3 active properties, 3 sold properties, and 3 terminated properties. That's fine too, because also maybe you have a listing presentation that is different than the CMA. So your listing presentation, I'll show you an example of one and where you might be able to download it. But listing presentations, again, as I mentioned before, it's really nice to bring it in several formats. So again, if you have somebody who's expecting the formal presentation, you may want to have it on your laptop. I heard of an agent here at Zolo who has a little mini projector, so he's able to project his presentation on, a blank wall. So, really kind of showing how sophisticated you are with technology. If you are, then take advantage of that. But again, if the sellers are a little bit more relaxed, you're at the kitchen table, they're offering you tea, then you might just want to have a discussion with them and then use the printed format as kind of your talking points, right? So having it in a binder that maybe you can leave with them. Take the extra step too. If you do have it in a printed format, go to Staples, ask them to bind it. They can bind it for you either with the Surlocks, whatever it's called, the Surlocks binding, or they can bind it for you and it kind of looks like a novel, like a book. So those are some good ideas. So again, if you're going to be leaving it with them, it's really professionally done and it's not just loose pieces of paper in a folder, right? So have your listing presentation in a few different formats. Of course, don't forget the listing agreement. That's the whole goal, right? You want to go in there, you've already impressed them with your pre-listing email, you've done your listing presentation, you've done a tour of the property, you're having a good conversation with your sellers. Don't forget to bring the listing agreement. You don't want to walk away having had an amazing presentation without getting that signature on the spot. So you need to be able get that signature by bringing a blank listing agreement. So bring that with you along with the data information sheet. Although the MLS data information sheet, personally, I think it's such a long, tedious form, but it's one that we have to complete. You may not want to complete that then and there because it will take time, but that's something that you can prepare afterwards and email to them for electronic signature. But at the very least, you've got the listing agreement signed, and you're authorized to upload their listing and to complete that MLS data sheet. Of course, you do want to ask them for their photo ID. You want to make sure that you are speaking to the owners, and you can fill out the FinTrack forms afterwards or there, working with a realtor. And then again, a really sort of power move, I think, in a listing presentation is to bring that lockbox with you. And if you have previously asked them to make an extra set of their keys, then you can put that lockbox right on their property at the end of the listing presentation. You've got that listing agreement signed. You put the lockbox on the door, and you can give them the peace of mind that while they're out or while they're away for the weekend, whatever it is, you're going to have people come in, take photos, whatever it is, right? So, and they're able to access the property because you've got a lockbox already there on the property, and they've already prepared the extra key for you. So it's all about being prepared, all about preparing them in advance so that you can do, you're ready to go basically as soon as you walk away from the listing presentation. All right, so this is an example of a listing presentation that I have downloaded from Breakthrough Broker, which is something I always recommend because it's free. I always like to find things that are free. There's lots of things that are free trials and then they charge you later, but this one actually is free. Breakthroughbroker.com. There's a bunch of templates that you can download. You'll find this one, the listing presentation. You can choose your colors, and basically all you have to do is upload your photo and then your brokerage's logo, so the Zolo logo, and then your contact information. Most of the information in the listing presentation is already auto-populated, but you will want to include at least one slide that talks about Zolo, right? Talking about how many visitors we get. We're over 10 million visitors a month right now, so that's definitely something to highlight. Definitely we're exposed to a lot of buyers, so that's definitely something you want to be talking about in your listing presentation. So putting together some kind of a listing presentation, again, this one is Breakthrough Broker. There are tons out there that you can download, but this one is free and it's available to you. So, and as I said, most of it is already auto-populated. You can obviously just tweak the pages that talk about you and then the pages that talk about Zolo. So making sure that you have that included in your presentation. So we did used to have these pre-made booklets, Why List with Zolo. They do exist, I think, but actually they still exist as hard copies in the office, but you can also download them in your CRM, so in your Zolo CRM. So if you go under tools, there are 2 presentations there that you'll be able to download. So you can take some of the information, some of the wording from here, put it into your own presentation, or have these printed. So, definitely it gives you some information as to why they might want to list with Zolo, and I've already touched on a few of those, right? The amount of buyers we have visiting the site every month, the fact that they get featured on the site. So talking to them about what that means. A featured listing is the first listing that they're going to see if somebody Googles, or sorry, not Googles, but searches for that area. So in other words, if you're on the Zolo site and you search for Toronto, it's not going to be properties listed by price or by days on market. It's the default way that it comes up is recommended properties. So Zolo is going to recommend its own listings first. So it doesn't matter what the price point is. Whoever is searching in Mississauga, if you have that listing in Mississauga, that property is going to come up as a featured listing. So something really important to talk to your clients about. Another thing too, let me see, we've got a question coming up. If a property is listed by Zolo, is the contact of the agent randomized, or the Zolo listing agent will show up? Yes, so it is randomized. So if somebody does click on that property, they do get sent to their previously assigned Zolo agent. So yeah, that's how that works with that one. Thanks for that question. So the other thing I wanted to touch on was the reverse buyer search, because this is something that you can show during a listing presentation. So the reverse buyer search literally says, if you click on tools, there's a drop-down menu. It says reverse search, and in brackets it says find buyers. So you can tell your potential sellers that obviously every agent that comes in to do a listing presentation is going to promise that they have buyers, right? And oftentimes what that means is it means they're going to put your property on MLS, and hope to find buyers. But what sets you apart from those other agents is that you actually have this tool within your Zolo CRM. So talk to them about this feature, because basically what this allows you to do, again, going back to the example of having a condo listing, you can find another condo that's maybe active right now, and you can pull that MLS number, plug it into the reverse buyer search, and it's going to give you a list of everybody who has registered to the Zolo.ca website. And it's going to give you their names, their phone numbers, their email addresses. So that right there is a list of buyers that have looked at a similar property, maybe a property 2 floors up from the property you're looking to list, 2 floors down, whatever it is, down the hall. So definitely something that you want to be showing your sellers, because this truly, verifies that you do in fact have buyers, and you're not simply hoping to find buyers just by putting it on MLS. You do have a list of people that you can reach out to and talk to about your listing. So use that reverse search, show it to your potential buyers, to your sellers, because it's a very unique tool. It's exclusive to Zolo. It's not something that you can do with any other CRM if you're buying online leads somewhere else. So definitely something to highlight. As I already mentioned, the featured listing. So again, here's an example. If anybody types in Toronto on the website, then the first thing that's going to come up are going to be the featured listings. So you can see here that it's not by price point, it's by featured listings, right? So we're not featuring the multi-million-dollar properties first. We are featuring our own Zolo listing. So again, another reason for them to use Zolo when listing. All right, the question that always comes up is commission. So definitely, you want to be prepared to handle this question, and you really want to have, all of your marketing that you do in your presentation to justify the commission. So of course, every area is a little bit different. I know out in Hamilton, for example, they may charge, 2% on either side, but typically Toronto, most other places will be 2.5% on each side, so a total of 5% commission. And first of all, just let the clients know that definitely there's no room to negotiate the 2.5% on the cooperating end. You don't want agents not showing your property because you're not offering them the sort of standard commission. And I shouldn't say standard, but you know what I mean. And then on your side, also go for 2.5. If they're asking you for a break, you may have, your own rules in your business, how you do things, that maybe you will take a point off. So maybe you will do 1.5 if they buy with you, but otherwise really try to stick to the 2.5. And if you do find yourself in a situation where you're negotiating, just remember that there are a lot of numbers between 2.5% and 1%. So don't drop it all the way down to 1% right away. Try to negotiate down to maybe 2%, again, if they're, buying a property with you, or there's some other reason like that. So, definitely having that discussion, but then again, redirecting them from this question and showing the value, right? Showing what it is that you're going to do for them, specifically the marketing, which I think I have coming up here next. Yeah, marketing. All right. Okay, so you want to be talking to them about what it is that you're going to do in order to feature their property in the best possible way. So definitely you want to recommend staging and professional photos. You don't want to be the realtor who's taking the picture, of the bathroom and you can see the realtor in the mirror. You want to have professional photos. So this is a before and after. So, find before and afters if you don't have experience yet yourself where you've listed a property, or maybe ask your growth manager if they have before and afters, and you can include that in your listing presentation, right? Because this is a before and after. This is the exact same condo, but of course, it was a bachelor pad, so you can see that the projector screen is rolled down and the projector itself is sitting on top of a popcorn box. So, that's not going to show in the best possible way. So by simply rolling up that screen, hiding the projector and all the cords into some nice baskets, all of a sudden, we've got some artwork there in between the windows. All of a sudden, it looks completely different, completely transformed, right? So it's definitely going to entice buyers. They're more likely to want to visit that property that's staged than one that isn't. So, and then again, as I said, using professional photography to really highlight the property in the best possible light. You don't want to be doing those on your own. We do have Sidekicks Media at the office, and he's able to definitely do, I believe he has photography as well as signage and all of that. So reach out to him if you don't have a photographer that you're currently working with. And then of course, if you don't have signs, also reach out to Hamid at Sidekicks Media. So marketing materials, of course, this is the Zolo branded for sale sign, open house sign. You know, you want to be printing out the MLS information sheets. You may even want to create a feature sheet. So again, that's something that Hamid can help you with at Sidekicks Media, so that you have something a little bit more professional that they can take with them after they've visited the property. So of course, these are Zolo branded. If you do have a brand that you have, so your own logo, that sort of thing, you want to include your picture, whatever it is, then order your signs with that branding. And again, Hamid can help you with that. And you can, you know, get him, you can order those through him. And here are some examples of some marketing materials that he has done. So, you know, because in addition to all of this, you may want to be telling your sellers that you also are going to send out, you know, just listed postcards to the neighborhood. Maybe you're going to contact the neighbors. Maybe you're actually going to go door knocking in the neighborhood. So again, if it's a condo, that might be a little bit tricky, but if it's townhouses, you might want door hangers that's, you know, letting people know that you've got this listing coming up. So just notifying the neighborhood, you know, in either way or both ways, right? Going to the neighbors or having these direct mail outs to the rest of the neighborhood. So here's an example of one that Hamid put together. So again, using the Zolo branding, although her name is branded as well. And then, so this one was a just sold postcard. So something else that you can do after the fact, right? And so again, just going back to your listing presentation, if you have sold properties before, letting them know your experience, letting them know, you know, what it's sold for. In this case, 101% of asking price in 2 weeks. So if you have accomplishments like that, definitely highlighting that and disclosing that to your sellers. In addition to that, I mean, you can also have mail outs that maybe don't promote the particular listing and promote yourself, but we're talking about working with sellers here. So in this case, have something that goes out that does promote any of your upcoming listings. All right. So if you are going to be doing open houses, so that is slowly coming back. If you are going to be doing open houses, definitely, you know, you're going to want to do a few things that maybe we're not used to in doing open houses before, but you definitely want to have maybe some sort of, you know, station where people can have, you know, you've got the hand sanitizer, you've got the gloves, you've got the masks, so that they can take that with them. But also you want to make sure that everybody is signing in, right? So, and this is also going to help you generate leads. So if people come to your open house and they say, no, they're not working with a realtor, and then they tell you, you know, yes, they're looking to buy something as soon as possible, or they're just looking, you know, you may want to reach out to the people who are looking to buy something as soon as possible or within the next year. And then hopefully, you know, those are your leads. But definitely having a sign-in system and definitely structuring your open house so that you're limiting the amount of people that come in. So if you are going to be doing an open house, definitely, you know, we can talk about that on the workplace group and come up with some ideas, but really managing it so that there's not too many people in the property all at once. So having some kind of a system where they sign in. This is a sample of a sign-in sheet. So this really is more for you than for the seller. Yes, it's nice for the seller to have an open house because, you know, there's that exposure, but really this is going to be for you as well to generate some leads. So if you have a seller willing to do open houses, then go ahead and take advantage of that. So of course, once you have you know, you do have the listing active and you've uploaded it to MLS. Again, just going back to the CRM here, you do want to make sure that you specify that you have an agreement in place and it is a listing agreement. So just a quick note about the CRM there. So don't forget about that. And here at Zolo, we do upload our own listings. So I know the growth managers get a lot of questions about this, you know, specifically how it's done. Obviously, you want to be logging into Treb. And what you want to be doing is you want to be going to the Add Edit button over here on the sidebar. And that's going to allow you to upload your listing. So basically what ends up happening is you see this screen here. You do have the ability to clone the listing. So if it was previously listed, you can pull in that MLS number and then it will copy all of the information from the previous listing that you can then tweak, right? Because I'm assuming that if you are cloning a listing, you're probably going to be changing the price. You may want to change the description, all that sort of thing. Hopefully you've got updated photos. So, you can go ahead and proceed that way. Otherwise, you're just adding a new listing. So you would select whether or not it's a residential freehold property or a condo, and then of course, whether or not it's for sale or for lease. So if you have a listing, this is how you would upload it. So again, you're going to the add edit field, and then from there, you're selecting the type of property and if it's for sale or for lease. So from there, yeah, that's just showing you how to clone the listing and enter the MLS number, but otherwise you'll be entering it in as a new listing. So the listing agreement, there's a couple of things here that I want to bring up. There are two circles up at the top. One is a MLS agreement and one is an exclusive agreement. You can actually have the seller sign both. And the reason for that, if they do sign both, you definitely want to make sure that there are dates saying when it's an exclusive listing and then a date as to when it will be listed on MLS. So for example, when you're walking out of that listing presentation, they may need a couple of weeks to, maybe declutter, paint a few rooms, whatever the situation is. But if they initial over here that you have this exclusive listing agreement, you're able to start promoting the listing immediately, right? So it's not listed yet on MLS, but maybe you have Facebook groups that you're a part of, and you're going to promote it to other agents who also sell in the same area. Coming soon, you can talk about the property. So it allows you to market the property exclusively before it hits MLS. Just make sure that you have those dates in place there so that it's clear as to when that property is going to be listed. Of course, everything else will be pretty straightforward. You want to make sure you have the seller's name in there and the address, and then of course making sure that it is effective the day of your listing presentation if you are going to have that exclusive listing period. Otherwise, you would start it on the day that it's actually going to hit MLS. So just keep that in mind. This is the MLS data information sheet. So again, just filling all this out. It is a long form. You may want to print out a previous listing and just make sure that you're entering the correct information. But of course, if you have questions, ask the seller, look it up on GeoWarehouse, and filling out all the mandatory forms. This is something that you're going to need signed by the seller and uploaded to your checklist in web forms. So make sure that you have this in order and that you're uploading it correctly. Another note here, because we do have access to add our own listings, we're uploading our own listings, we do have the ability to edit our own listings. Please make sure that any changes that you need to make to the listing presentation is authorized by the seller. So if you and your seller have decided to drop the price, that's fine, but it has to be done in writing. So you can't just go ahead and change that price. You need to make sure that the seller is signing this form 240. So it's an amendment to the listing agreement. So for example, the listing price, if it was previously listed at $510 and now the new listing price is going to be $499, you want to go ahead and make sure that that is initialed by the seller and then this form is signed. So you need to make sure your paperwork is in order, and that should be delivered to the deals department within 24 hours of that form being completed or uploaded to your web forms. All right, so let's talk about offers. So it's a different experience to be on the other side of the table. If you're used to representing buyers, this is a different experience representing sellers. So it's up to you, and this is a conversation for you to have with your sellers about whether or not to hold off on offers, which seems to be what's happening mostly right now in the market, or whether to accept offers anytime. So you can talk to them about the pros and cons of that. Take a look at what's happening in that particular neighborhood. Again, going back to that condo example, if you see that everybody else has held off on offers and they've gone into multiples and they've gotten more than they've asked for, then maybe that's a good strategy, right? And then you can talk to your seller about that. But really reviewing and accepting an offer to purchase, you want to make sure that if, regardless of whether or not you're accepting offers anytime or you're receiving multiple offers, you want to know the terms of each offer and you want to be able to present that to your seller. So what's the price? What's the closing date? What are the conditions, if any, and review the exclusions and the inclusions in the offer, right? So review every detail, making sure that, if they're asking for the chandelier, that, the seller is willing to part with the chandelier. If they're asking for repairs such as roof shingles or repairing the driveway, make sure again that the seller is willing to do that. And then of course, I've mentioned this before as an example, hoping that the buyer will request a longer closing date if they do have a property to sell, as opposed to making it conditional on selling their home. So just really knowing the terms, really knowing every detail. And then of course the seller has a few options. They can either accept the offer, they can reject the offer outright, or they can counter it, right? So working with your seller, if you do have just that one offer that comes in, then it's a little bit easier. But if you have multiple offers that have come in, then really make sure you know what the terms are for each and every offer, and you can discuss which ones to reject all of them possibly, and work with one, or maybe sending them all back for a second round. If they're really close in price, you may be able to get a little bit more for your seller if you ask them to come back again with their best and final. So some options there certainly, but the seller of course has the options there of either accepting, rejecting, or countering any offer that comes in. All right, so negotiating and counter offers. So with counter offers, take a good look at what the buyer is asking for. If it's a minor detail and you're countering, again, the chandelier, maybe you don't want to do that. It's up to you, it's up to the seller. So have a discussion about that, and try to, if it's a good offer, try to encourage your seller to accept it. But then in multiple offers, of course, again, as I already said, there may be a situation where you accept one over all others, or you may ask everybody to come back with, a second round, their best and final. So talking to your seller beforehand about what to expect in multiple offers. And that's actually a whole other webinar that we've done, and we can do it again on how to handle multiple offers, because there's so many things that, so many ways it can go. So definitely an entirely different webinar altogether. So we can bring that back if you guys are interested. But in the meantime, if you guys have questions about what we've covered so far today, we do have about 10 minutes left. So I have time for your questions. So again, if you guys, I did say at the very beginning, if you guys have listings right now, I'd love to hear from you guys. Just say yes or no. And if you do, I also always like knowing where they came from. So is it a Zolo listing or not? So again, just chat with me. If you have questions, let me know. I see somebody here saying no listings right now. So that's okay. And the other thing actually that we've talked about before is marketing. So that was a webinar that we did recently. So if you do want to generate more seller leads, then definitely that's a webinar that you might want to take a look at, and maybe even another, we'll offer that again specifically for generating seller leads. So if you guys have questions, let me know. I'm here for you. Otherwise, we can chat in the workplace group. Let me know if there's anything from this presentation that you would like, any links that you want from me, and I can upload them there. So staging services, great question. So staging services, that is going to vary depending on the area you're in. So reach out again, use the workplace group as a resource. Ask people if they have a staging company that they use, that they recommend, and then maybe having them come in for a quote. Do I recommend a stager? I'm out in Oakville, so the stagers I use are all the way out here, and don't travel very far. They stay in Oakville, Burlington, but just if you are looking for a stager, make sure that you put it up on the workplace group. I'm sure people will have recommendations for you depending on what area you're in. And then the best thing to do is have a few stagers come over. If you haven't used them before, maybe have 2 or 3 companies come over, give you a quote, and then that way you can select, based on that as well. So, based on their experience, the photos that they show you of their before and afters, and certainly it comes down to price, right? Get some recommendations off the workplace group and then have them come over for some quotes. Awesome. All right. If there aren't any other questions, I will leave you with that. Do we have to have a stager? I mean, if a realtor has skills that he or she can stage as well, yeah, absolutely. So there are realtors here at Zolo who actually have their, staging certificate. They've taken a course for it, and they have, extra furniture that they keep on hand for staging properties. So it's definitely something that you can do. That's another thing to definitely highlight in your listing presentation, that maybe you include staging because you're a stager, you have the furniture for it. So absolutely, if you have the skills, definitely take advantage of that, and let your sellers know. Where do you get a staging certificate? You know what? I'll reach out to the realtors that I know who have taken the course, and I'll find out where they took it, and I'll definitely post it on the on the workplace group for sure. Will do. Awesome. All right. Okay, good questions. Yeah, my pleasure, you guys. Okay, well, I'll leave you with that. If you guys have other questions, we'll chat on the workplace group. But otherwise, thanks for joining me today, and we'll see you on the next webinar. Thanks so much, guys. Have a great day. Bye.